Hi, BookTube. One of the things as a booktuber that happens frequently is that you don't press the record button. And that's just what's happened to me. Oh my gosh. Anyway, all right. Hello, everyone. I just finished this book, Frankenstein. I've read it for the first time. This was the original cover or cover page of the book, Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. The Modern Prometheus, that title being the alternate title, should tell you everything. I am not a Greek scholar, so I had to look it up into it. And isn't Prometheus the person that wanted to So, I'm an everyday reader. This is not a critical analysis of Frankenstein. This is not putting the book in context. If you want that, which I did, I highly recommend that you pick up one of these types of critical editions, because I really had fun reading the whole contextual beginning of this book. I have not read the criticism yet, which will be interesting, but I just wanted to come to you. It's mid-October. I wanted to share my experience as soon as I could. I feel like this is a morality tale, and put in its time. It was published in 1818. It was published anonymously because Mary Shelley, being a woman, probably wouldn't have been able to get this published. It's not a romantic tale. It's not the kind of book, apparently, that women were writing at the time. It was worthwhile to understand Mary Shelley, who Mary Shelley's mother and father were. She's writing this book in Geneva. She is there during the summer with her boyfriend, Percy Shelley. They're not married yet, I don't believe. They do have a 2-year-old child together. Percy Shelley has been married once, and I don't know whether he's just not divorced yet. They do end up eventually getting married. So they're there with friends, creative friends, and it is the rainiest summer of that time that Geneva has seen. It is known as like the year without a summer in that area. So they were holed up, they were playing games, and then one of the things they eventually got to was, why don't we try to write a ghost story? It'll be a ghost story contest, or a story that uses a supernatural in some way. So they all started that, but then the sun came out, and most of her friends just said, okay, forget that. We're going to go out and enjoy the mountains now. And Mary Shelley stuck with it and wrote a short story, which was then later adapted into a novel with the encouragement of Percy Shelley, and then they got it published. She then later revised it a little. I don't know how, maybe because of criticism later. I don't recall those details, but this book had the original 1818 edition, so the original edition. What really got me about this book was, Mary Shelley, I'm assuming, wasn't writing this as a ghost story and wasn't necessarily writing this tale as a book to be read during Halloween. It could be read any time of year, but it is very atmospheric in the way that nature is described in very seasonally and in stark ways. There's a lot of stark landscape in this book, so it does conjure up the feeling of like a book you want to read this time of year. So a couple things that I want to share in terms of what my experience was and some of the areas of the book that I want to draw out. I was surprised to see that the book starts in letters. And you've got to get your footing in the beginning, because you're like, why are there letters? Nobody is named Frankenstein in these letters. Who are these people? So you have to get your bearings around that. And then you realize that the person that's writing, the male person that's writing the female, is going to tell you about meeting this person named Victor Frankenstein and the circumstances in which they met. So he's writing letters back home while he's on some sort of expedition. All of that just sets you up for like, wow, like this story is almost going to be told in reverse, and it is somewhat. So a few things that I want to draw out here. What I really enjoyed, one of the first things I really enjoyed about this book is the backstory that we get about Victor Frankenstein. And he's from Geneva, his family is from Geneva, they're well-to-do, except something happens where the family experiences like a financial backstep. And so that's a little discombobulating to the father. But Victor loves his childhood. He then goes to college. But before he leaves for college, he starts reading some alchemist books. This is an area that he's interested in. And he's excited to tell his father about some of the books that he's been reading. My father looked carelessly at the title page of my book and said, "Ah, Cornelius Agrippa, my dear Victor, do not waste your time upon this. It's sad trash." And then he goes on to read, so his father had taken the pains to explain to me that the principles of Agrippa had been entirely exploded, and that a modern system of science had been introduced, which possessed much greater powers than the ancient, because the powers of the latter were chimerical. I don't have any idea whether I'm pronouncing that word right, but that was a new word for me, and it's used a couple times in this book, which was published in 1818. And chimerical means imaginary, fanciful. So that was pretty cool. He, however, Victor goes on to read other alchemists, Paracelsus and Albertus Magnus. He was enthralled with these writers, and apologies up front if I'm not pronouncing them correctly, but I made a couple notes here. And one of the things that he becomes fascinated about is the idea of, or the myth of, the Philosopher's Stone, which is this substance that turns base metals into gold. And this substance can also supposedly be turned into an elixir that will give eternal life. So that, along with his fascination with electricity, which he first experiences through watching a lightning storm and asking his father about it, his father tells him that that is, in fact, electricity. That is how electricity is generated, or one of the ways anyway. Then he goes to college in Ingolstadt, and it's interesting reading the beginning of this book why Mary Shelley chooses Ingolstadt as the university, and the types of views that the university had and what was thought eventually about that place. But he goes to Ingolstadt, he meets a professor, and that professor throws out everything that Victor has been reading. It says, that is all garbage, you need to study the natural philosophers. So then he becomes interested in where the direction that this professor is pointing him. Not that he's throwing out everything that he's already read and that he's interested in, but he's also bringing in the ideas and the works that the professor is talking about. In one part he says, "My dreams were therefore undisturbed by reality." In other words, he slowly starts backing away from his family, the people that he loves, that he's very close to, and Elizabeth, his cousin, who he is apt to marry, people that are really important to him. His mother dies from scarlet fever when he's about to enter college, and he just devotes himself to studying, and he sees that he's letting go of paying attention to the people that he loves. "My dreams were therefore undisturbed by reality, and I entered with the greatest diligence into the search of the Philosopher's Stone and the elixir of life. But the latter obtained my most undivided attention. Wealth was an inferior object, but what glory would attend the discovery if I could banish disease from the human frame and render man invulnerable to any but a violent death." So he becomes obsessed, and what I don't really understand is why then it led him to what we could all assume happens. Whether we've seen the movie, any number of movies, we get the idea that there's a thing that's created that's referred to as a monster, that he builds out of dead bodies and the like. I think from as well as I can discern, that he was really wanting to get to the root of what causes a person or any living creature to be alive versus dead. What is that thing, that spark of life that creates someone to be alive? And can it be created? Can I create that? And by building a person from dead tissue, can I put life into that person? Because if I can, then wouldn't that be powerful if that could be true? Now, I don't know how that will then later translate in his mind to eradicating disease, but I just think that power of taking something that is dead and breathing life into it through these modern measures, including electricity, is the first step. And he becomes so obsessed with this. But the writing around that is so well and subtly done by Mary Shelley. It does make this story a very human story that, yes, focuses on this thing that then becomes alive and is out of control and disappears before Victor Frankenstein can realize what's going on. But the whole process that he's going through, and the very subtle shift between being with his family, caring about them, looking to the future, wanting to marry Elizabeth, and then just becoming completely obsessed with the end goal of obtaining this glory. And the long and short of it is, I'm not going to spoil it for you because I want you to be as delighted and entertained with this writing as I was. But I will just say here that the interactions, the unexpected interactions that Victor has with his creation after the creation has gone off into the world in strange circumstances, why he's done that, are some of the most humane and beautiful writing is the conversations between them. Not always easy, terrifying sometimes. But the way that Mary Shelley brings this creation to life in a way that changes Victor's heart, and he's weighing now, his conscience is weighing on him about what does he owe a being that he's created. That's complicated because there are things that are happening around this creature existing, and his desire to just now move on with his future and marry Elizabeth. This is really the heart of the story for me. I was surprised that the writing around the creature's feelings is so eloquent, so well done, that Mary Shelley just spends so much time on this area, because after all, I think this is why she's writing the story, to be a morality tale and for the story not to be straightforward. We don't know what's going to happen. We have no idea what's going to happen. The movie isn't going to help you. The movie is so loosely based on the story. I'm talking about the movie, the 1930 movie with Boris Karloff. It's so beautiful. It's a page turner too. Yeah, it's a thriller, but it's also such a beautiful book to read and a wonderful accomplishment by Mary Shelley. Did she ever write anything else? I haven't looked that far ahead. I don't know. I've got to guess that this just stands on its own. There are so many places in this book that I marked off to read quotes from, but I'm not going to, because I think it's going to reveal too much about the characters, and that's the surprising part. I really would love for you to experience that on your own, so I'm not going to. Just know that this has just been such a wonderful experience for me. It won't take you any time at all because it is such a page turner, and it's not that long. This is a Norton Critical Edition, so it's thicker than the book itself. Please let me know if you've read this book, and please come back and tell me all about reading this book if you do get to it. But this does not feel stodgy in any way. And now I'm going to go find out more about Mary Shelley. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the next one.